Hi, guys. Welcome to Cosi Talks Live. If you are watching the replay, comment replay. I do like to check to see who's watching the replay after I'm done with the show and pick up any questions or comments that might be said. In the meantime, let's say hello to some of the people who have already popped on board. We've got Emily coming in from Central PA with strawberry lemonade in her cup tonight. We've got Chuck in Wyoming. He's got tea, and he's not listening to me from the YouTube channel like he normally does. So, guys, just as a reminder, I am broadcasting from YouTube and Facebook this evening in case you're having difficulty with one of the platforms. We got Rob here from Georgia with coffee in his cup. We got Alex. There's one of my Tar Heels right there from Lake Norman, North Carolina. We got Marianne Thompson coming in from South Dakota. Randy coming in from San Diego with his iced tea, and Jerry Ann from Arizona drinking her vanilla latte. So, guys, and we got Marty from Texas. There's my Texan with a large Red Bull. Do not mess with Texas, man. Do not mess with Texas. All right, guys, for those of you joining me for the first time, welcome. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT now for a little over 23 years, and my passion is working with the limb loss community. So it's been kind of an interesting past couple of months. I had one kid graduate high school, my first high school graduate, holy cow, and another one that's getting ready to start high school, all sorts of fun changes around here. So we've been just trying to get into the summer groove. We've got Pastor Dave on board with his tea, and Bill coming in from Prescott. We got a lot of folks from Arizona tonight with his iced tea in the jug. Yes, definitely our drinks now are turning more towards the cold end of things. I do want to say a huge thank you. So many of you volunteered to be patient amputee models, to be interviewed by the students of the physical therapy program over at the University of Florida. So last week, I put out a casting call for people to volunteer to be interviewed by these PT students. And again, many of you answered that call, and I just want to say thank you very much for supporting the new and up-and-coming generation of physical therapy students. I think it's important for us to get in as early as we can and let them know about the need there is for amputee care within physical therapy. We got Ben and Gregory coming on board from Texas. Chuck is also on YouTube. You broadcast in stereo here. Oh my, I broadcast in stereo. Don't know how I did that. Does it look like Fred is gnawing on Bob's knee? I did not do that on purpose. I just kind of quickly put them out there. I don't know what the two of them are up to over there. We got a couple of great questions that came in tonight, quite a few questions that came in. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So this question is kind of a follow-up from last week. So I had a viewer who went and had osseointegration done. We've done lots of shows on osseointegration. We've had wonderful sponsorships from Integrum, the makers of the Oprah system. That is the FDA-approved osseointegration implant here in the United States for above-the-knee amputees. And you also see what's called PressFit. That's a different method of osseointegration, and you're starting to see that pop up in the U.S. as well. That is not FDA-approved, however. I do want to make that distinction. The reason why you do see it in the US is because they are doing investigational device exemption. So that's kind of the precursor to becoming someday FDA approved. So that's why you're starting to see a mixture of both methods. Okay, and we've spoken extensively on both and the pros and cons of each, as well as what you need to know going into osseointegration. And the more questions I receive, the more I really feel like I need to continue to address that side of it. So this particular individual had osseointegration done. She had the step 2 procedure with her Oprah implant system with a particular clinic. I will say ahead of time, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that because that's not what's important. I personally was not familiar with this particular clinic and surgeon. So I had to do some back and forth with the questioning to try to see if I could help this individual. But she was concerned because of the communication with this particular clinic and this particular surgeon and team. Okay. And it was, again, something that in speaking with this individual, I was encouraging her, yes, you need to have good communication with your team. Yes, your team should be communicating with you with X, Y, and Z steps. So nice thing is that communication is going much better for this particular individual. So her question now is, apparently she finished phase 2. So with the Oprah system, it's a 2-part surgery. The first part, the implant is placed into the bone and then everything is closed up nice and tight. Okay. And then in stage 2, which is typically 3 to 6 months later, depending on how well the bone is fusing with the implant, with step 2, the surgeon creates the opening, the aperture, and then they place the abutment. I'm going to go ahead and throw up a picture of it so you guys can see, for those of you who are perhaps new to this or not as familiar. Okay, so in the first part procedure, like I said, the part that goes into the bone, the fixture is implanted and then everything is closed up. Second part of the procedure, okay, surgeon makes that opening and places what's called the abutment. And the abutment is attached to the prosthesis through a device called the Axor 2. Okay, now after the stage 2 procedure, okay, there's a very strict weight-bearing protocol. And again, the Oprah is different than the press fit method of osseointegration, okay? So the basic difference is with the press fit method, okay, it's a 1-step procedure for the most part. There are some press fit methods that still require the 2 procedures, but for the most part, it's a 1-step procedure, okay? And then the way the surgeon creates that opening is different. Okay, so they look different. And then the weight-bearing protocols, meaning how much weight you can put into that leg after the surgery is done, is also very, very different. And guys, I'm not going to go into the full details because there's a lot of details. And I've done a lot of shows on this with some of the top surgeons in the world. They're on my YouTube channel and they're also on my Facebook page. But this is just kind of the general overview. Okay. So with the Oprah, after the stage 2, there's a very strict weight-bearing protocol, okay? And the particular individual who messaged me said that her surgeon delayed her weight-bearing, and she was confused by this. Apparently, at first she was told that she would start able to bear weight little by little at the 6-week mark after the second procedure, or excuse me, after the 4-week mark. And now the surgeon has extended it to 6 weeks. And she's going, why? Like, why is my surgeon telling me this? Why can't I start the weight-bearing protocol? And she says, my x-rays look good. It shows that the bone is looking good and good bone contact. You know, what is this criteria based on? Okay. The best thing I can tell you when it comes to osseointegration, because again, it's been around for 30 years globally. So it was first done in 1990 over in Sweden by Dr. Brandemark. Okay, so we have 30 years of research and protocols. However, it is still relatively new in the United States. It got FDA approved in 2020. And we've come, like in those short 5 years, guys, we've come a long way in the knowledge and the incredible study that was just released by Drs. Forsberg and I believe Dr. Potter, some of the top guys in the field in the United States, right? So while we have a lot of information, we are still evolving in our protocols. Okay. So guys, back in 2019, before this was even FDA approved, when it was still in the investigational stage here in the United States, I had Integrum on my show. Okay. And it was a very strict protocol that the person had to wait 6 months, no exceptions, between stages 1 and stages 2 of the procedure. Fast forward to 5 years later now to 2025, and now we're able to shorten that between 3 to 6 months. Okay, so depending on the individual. And then the protocols themselves are also evolving. So right now, the standard protocol to use for after surgery for rehabilitation is the one that was done by Walter Reed back in 2019. Okay, so Walter Reed is like the really awesome military hospital where a lot of this new technology starts and then it trickles down to civilian world. Okay, but even in the behind the scenes, right, we're starting to see small tweaks and evolution to the Walter Reed protocol. Okay, has anything official been put out yet for updating that protocol? Not officially, but I can tell from my colleagues and all the chitter chatter behind the scene on the coconut wireless system we got going on that there are changes that are being made because we're learning more as we go with our patients, right? Okay, so when I hear that a surgeon says, you know what, we want to delay the weight bearing a little bit, we want to give that bone a little more time to heal, quite honestly, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Okay. So whatever it is that surgeon saw on the x-ray, even if the x-ray shows really good bone fusion, stability, there's something there that surgeon saw that gave that surgeon pause. Okay. And surgeons, they're usually the go-getters, right? They usually like to get things moving, get their patients going, get things moving. So when a surgeon is putting the brakes on and saying, you know what, let's be a little bit conservative, put the brakes on a little bit, and let's give that body a little bit more time, guys, I'm all for it. I'm all for it, especially with something like osseointegration. It's a wonderful, fantastic procedure. And it has really, I've seen it change the lives of so many amputees, but it is still a pretty intense procedure and it's an intense rehab protocol, and things can go wrong. Things can go wrong with any surgery, but with osseointegration. Okay. So if I see a surgeon that's being a little bit on the conservative side, I say, okay. Okay. The worst case that can happen with a surgeon being a little bit conservative with the weight bearing protocol is that the person is just a little bit delayed, and that's it. Okay. And when I compare that to what can happen if the surgeon is being a little too aggressive, yeah, I'm going to stick with the more conservative approach. Okay. And again, I'm playing Monday morning quarterback. I don't know this individual. I haven't seen her x-rays. I don't know her surgeon. This is just based off the information I am being given. Okay. Now, if she were to have told me, well, my surgeon wants to start the weight bearing a lot earlier, a lot sooner, that would make me go, yeah, I don't know about that. Okay. Okay. But a surgeon wanting to delay. Now, guys, from the personal and patient side of it, I get her frustration. I truly do, from a professional standpoint and also from a personal standpoint. For those of you who don't know, I'm a relatively recent breast cancer survivor. I had to undergo several surgeries and multiple rounds of chemo for my breast cancer. And I remember in my second surgery, guys, I was so looking forward to getting the second surgery done, over with, and moving on, right? And it took a lot. I had 4 young kids. The hospital was about an hour away. I had to coordinate, move sun, moon, earth, and stars with my husband's work schedule, my family who was helping me with the kids, the 4 kids. So there's a lot of moving pieces to get me to that OR. Okay. Not to mention that mental of, oh my gosh, I finally get to get this out of the way and one step closer to finishing my cancer treatment. And at the same time, I still feel like crud because I'm on chemo, right? And literally, guys, I am not exaggerating. I am getting wheeled into the OR. Like, they are pushing me into the OR. And the surgeon says, wait a second, we can't operate on her. I'm not kidding, guys. Apparently, my labs came back right at that moment, and he was concerned about a particular lab value. And I remember I grabbed the labs out of his hand, and I'm sitting there, me in my crazy clinician mode. And I'm like, but this is fine. The labs are fine. I'm okay. And the surgeon's like, I don't like what I see, and I'm not going to risk it for you. Guys, you could probably hear my heart breaking at that particular moment in time. And I'm sitting there arguing with my surgeon, right? Because of all the work that it took to get me to the OR. And again, just wanting to get it out of the way. Okay. But my surgeon decided to put the brakes. He saw something in his radar mind went off, and he decided to be conservative with my approach and not risk it with me. And guys, honestly, to this day, I'm so grateful that the surgeon did that. Whatever it was that he saw, whatever his guardian angel was poking him about, it could have potentially saved me a really adverse event. Okay. So when you see these setbacks, guys, especially on some of these big procedures, and your surgeon wants to take a more conservative route, I urge you, listen to what they have to say. Listen to what they have to say. Okay. So I know I kind of went on like a little tangent there, but again, this particular case, it pulled my heartstrings because I could almost feel this person's anguish of wanting to go to that next step in their recovery process and having the brakes put onto them right there. Marianne said, my surgeon told my daughters I would never walk again. Well, Marianne, I'm glad you prove that surgeon wrong. Michelle, there's my girl, Michelle. I love it when a fellow physical therapist pops on board. Guys, if you haven't been over to Michelle's Instagram account on Align Rehabilitation, she's a phenomenal physical therapist over in the Northeast. Just won herself an award from the Maryland Physical Therapy Association. So congratulations to you, my friend and colleague. We've got Earl coming in from California. Glenn saying school is out for the summer. That's right. Sun's out, buns out. That's how we are in Florida right now. School is out. Michelle from Michigan saying, I'm getting osseointegration in November. Wonderful. We've got Ernest saying, hi, Cosi. Henry from San Diego. Iced coffee bustelo. Oh, that sounds so good. Oh my gosh, that sounds good. We got Jim coming in from Northeast Ohio, Stephen coming in from Michigan with sparkling water and blackberry water enhancer. I know, Van Gregory, my Instagram is just not cooperating tonight. Usually I'm streaming to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and Instagram just did not want to cooperate tonight. And I'm checking it now, and it's still saying, nope, you're not going to go live on Instagram tonight, but that's okay. We'll have fun over here. Let's see who else. We got Chuck saying excited for the show. Frank compadre. Oh, man, it's good to see you, man. We got Pam coming in from upstate New York. Glenn saying, we're excited to get the weight bearing protocol so we can get to the fun part of hanging out with the PTs. Well, I mean, yeah, of course, because we're the most fun of the whole crew. Shh, don't tell Dr. Shu I said that. We got Emily coming in saying, my neurosurgeon made me spend an extra night, New Year's Eve, in the hospital after a surgery. I was so mad, and I let everyone know about it, but it was probably for the best. I know. I was the crazy patient. I was the crazy patient because I was sitting there arguing, and I think about it now, and I'm like, man, I was cuckoo crazy, man, arguing with my surgeon over lab values. And my poor husband, he is in healthcare as well. And he's trying to calm his wife down and trying to calm his wife, the patient, and his wife, the clinician. So guys, those of you who are married to crazy Latina women, you can imagine how that went for my poor husband. Let's see, Christy saying hi from Auburn, Nebraska. So yeah, and then there's actually another great follow-up question. So so kind of piggybacking on that, guys, like it's really kind of fascinating to just listen to some of my colleagues. I obviously don't get to see osseointegration here in Tampa. It's starting to make its way here. But just listening to all of my colleagues who are seeing more osseointegration and just hearing how these protocols are changing and evolving. So it's kind of cool to have a front row seat to what is going on there. We got a lot of questions on osseointegration this week. I joked around with Integram saying, it's basically another sponsored show tonight. So let's see. This one came in over the text at my texting service, and it said, does Medicare cover osseointegration? So with FDA approval, and again, guys, when it comes to insurance and things like that, I am woefully out of my scope. Okay. I stink at anything insurance. So let me just put that out there. Y'all who have been on my show for a while, you know that insurance and we just don't get along very well. But I just can't give you the umbrella answer for all this. So with the FDA approval, one of the really cool things about FDA approval is insurance now doesn't have to pay, right? But they're more open to paying for services or new technology or whatever, because then the surgery, in this case, osseointegration, is not considered to be experimental once FDA gives its official approval, right? So as of 2020, insurances did start approving and paying for osseointegration. Does Medicare pay for it? I have had people who have Medicare that their Medicare did in fact pay for osseointegration. That being said, when I talked to some of my resources about this, they said that there's no official code for osseointegration. So what do I mean by that? Do you guys remember a little earlier this year, we talked about Click Medical, makers of the RevoFit system, adjustable system. And we were so excited because they got L code approval last year for one device and this year for another one of the devices. And the reason that was so exciting is because when there's an official code for a specific item or specific surgery, right? Insurance, that's holding the insurance feet to the fire. That means they got to pay for it. If you can justify that that's the product or the surgery that you need and there's a code for it, insurance is going to have a whole lot harder time saying no to you. Okay. But that takes time, right? So just because something becomes FDA approved does not automatically mean that they get a cool little code to go with whatever it is, right? So as of my understanding, again, when I checked with my resources today, there's no official code for osseointegration, okay? So surgeons and clinics that are getting insurance approval for their patients, they have to figure out how to convince these insurance companies, including Medicare, to pay for osseointegration. And again, that's where my knowledge ends. My understanding is every clinic and every surgeon has their different way of justifying this particular procedure for the insurance to cover the cost. And therein lies all the knowledge I have on our third-party payer insurance here in the United States. Chuck says he went and had the whole OI work up, all the testing, medical dollars spent, motel stay, only to be told 3 weeks later he did not qualify for OI. Oh my gosh. very hurt at that time. Now, best thing ever. Yeah, guys. And again, these, like I said, I am no expert when it comes to insurance, no expert. I will say this, and again, I'm going to keep hammering this point. If you are someone who is considering osseointegration, you need to find yourself a surgeon that has a comprehensive team. Okay. Big team. Okay. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Hey, we got John coming in from San Diego. Okay, what do I mean by the surgeon's team? It's not just, it's the surgeon, it's their nurse practitioner, it's a case manager or social worker. It's a physical therapist who has been trained in the protocols, an occupational therapist, and a prosthetist who has been trained in these protocols. Okay, so again, a surgeon in the United States can say, you know what, I'd like to do osseointegration and, with some training and things like that, do osseointegration. Okay. But you need to look at their team. Okay. And I had one of my viewers, GI Jane, she sent me this beautiful template and she gave me permission to use it. So I'm working on that right now, on all the questions you should be asking if you're deciding to go for osseointegration. One of the most important things I think for osseointegration that you need to know about is the communication. And guys, this goes for whether you're having a regular amputation, a revision, something like targeted muscle reinnervation, or if you're thinking about osseointegration. This is just for any surgical procedure, but especially for the osseointegration. Okay, you need to find out how the communication works with that surgeon. Okay. Again, this is kind of still a new procedure compared to all the other procedures we have in the US. Okay. There's not a lot of surgeons in the United States that are trained to do this. Some of you might be having to fly to another state to have this procedure done by a qualified surgeon. So you need to ask that surgeon, who is it that I'm going to be communicating with every step of the way? Okay. Not just those few days when I'm in the hospital, but what happens when I fly home? Who do I get in touch with? Who is going to be calling me back? If I have a problem at 3:00 in the morning, who is the person who's going to be calling me back? What is the protocol if, God forbid, something goes wrong? Okay. These are hard questions that you need to ask. You need to ask them, I would like to know some of the details about my rehab protocol. They should be well versed in their protocols. Even if they haven't seen a ton of patients, they should be familiar with these protocols. And so should the physical therapist. And they should be able to answer these basic questions for you. Okay. They shouldn't just be handing you a sheet and saying, oh, this is something for you to look over. No. You need to meet with all the members of this team. And believe me, with osseointegration, you're going to have your pre-surgery workup. So there's plenty of time for you to meet the team at some point or another. Okay. And I'm really going to kind of be pushing this because it is the surgeon's responsibility, right, to be responsible, right? If they're doing this newer procedure that involves a lot of care and a lot of rehab protocol. But as the person who is having this procedure done, right, you, the collective you, would be the one also dealing with the consequences, good or bad. Okay. So it's also on you to make sure that you are an informed consumer and to be your best patient advocate for this. Yeah. I'm kind of going heavy on this soapbox today because again, I'm getting a lot of questions about this and I want to make sure people are understanding the importance of asking these questions and not being afraid to put their feet to the fire. And if the surgeons cannot confidently answer your questions or you sense hesitation that they don't want to answer your questions, time to move on. Yeah. Michelle says, I'm getting my surgery in the Cleveland Clinic. Best of luck to you, Michelle, with that. All right. Okay. Here was a fun question. So Robert asked me, what form of expressions have you found best on prosthetics? And at first I was just like, what does this question mean? Do you mean like how people express themselves in the design of their prosthetic? And he said, yes. And he shared a picture with me that he gave me permission to put on the show right now. So I'm going to put this picture up of Robert Socket, which I think is very creative. I am not sure how he got those lights on there, but I think it's really, really, really cool. So yeah, guys, I remember that when I first started working with amputees over 23 years ago, everybody was wearing a cosmetic foam cover. Or cosmetic skin type covering, on their prosthesis. And then as the years went by, we started seeing a big shift and everybody started showing their mettle, as the saying goes. I think it's largely because we're starting to see more in our pop culture, in our movies, in our advertisements and sports. We're starting to see more awareness of amputees and how they function in daily life with their prosthetic devices. So with it, I've also seen, a lot of really wonderful individual expressions on how people create with their sockets. I know, Emily, isn't it really cool? So guys, I'd kind of love to hear from you about this. And if you feel, if you feel comfortable doing so, send me your pictures of if you have like a really cool design on your socket that you'd like to show off. And I'd love to just create a slideshow of some of these things for next week's show. So guys, you can email me at cositalks.com. And again, this is also if you have any questions regarding recovery from amputation. Robert says the battery pack is in my sock. Okay, I'm a PT, so I got to ask, how does that not affect your skin? But I guess you've got it figured out, Robert. But that's a really cool leg. I think it's a lot of fun. I know, Jerry Inch, it's pretty cool. Yeah, Marty's like, ooh, sparkly. Yeah. So Emily has the amputee humor shirts. Love those, by the way. I think the amputee humor shirts, they never fail to make me chuckle. So guys, let's do that. All right. If you want to send me a picture of your shirt, of your funny amputee humor shirt, or of a really cool socket design that you have that you don't mind sharing on the show. If you want just to show me and not have me share it on the show, just say so in the email. But I thought that was a really fun question. Let's see. Black sock under my foot. Okay, then you've got it figured out, man. You have got that figured out. I don't know how you did it, but you figured it out. Okay, let's move on. So we've got Jerry Ann's question. So she says, being a bilateral amputee using a wheelchair for almost 2 years, I'm curious about the most important exercises to prepare for using prosthetics. I own your book and have been doing some of the exercises. I appreciate knowing which ones are most crucial for preventing stiffness, particularly in my back and hips. I'm currently unable to stand for stretching. Thank you. Okay. So again, when you are using a wheelchair for a long period of time for your mobility, there are things that you need to be aware of. The biggest one, especially for a bilateral below the knee, is the hips, the tightness of the hips, and the tightness behind the knees. So knee flexion contracture or hip flexion contracture. Those are definitely the two biggies right there to take into consideration. Okay. And yes, in my book, I do have a whole section dedicated to stretching. Now, Jerry Ann, in your case, when it comes to the fact that you've been there for 2 years, again, this is where I would really encourage you, go see a physical therapist, okay? 2 years is enough time for contractures to develop and fixed contractures, okay? So we have some contractures that are not fixed, meaning they might be tight, but there's still pliability in those tendons, and there's still the ability to regain some of that range of motion. That's different from a contracture that is fixed, meaning that there are changes now to the tendons that could potentially be permanent. Okay. And the problem is if you start cranking on a fixed contracture, okay, you could cause damage to other areas. Okay. So just a quick anatomy lesson. Come here, Bob. You're on. Your turn. Okay, so one of the big muscles here, it's called the iliopsoas muscle, and it starts here, and it has also some attachments to your lower vertebrae, all right? So it's a big muscle that comes here over the front of your hip, and it attaches here, okay? So even though it's not a very long muscle, it's a very wide, very big, powerful muscle. So what happens is when you have an amputation, even as a below the knee, that big, powerful muscle will overpower things, right? Especially since you don't have the weight of your leg to hold it down and you're not walking normally through your daily life, okay? So if you develop a contracture, hip flexion contracture, and it's fixed, okay, keeping in mind that the iliopsoas is attached to parts of your vertebrae, and you start cranking to try to get that contracture and stretch out that hip, you're going to cause some damage to your lower back. Okay. So again, there's a lot of connections with some of these muscles in the hip and the pelvis all throughout your body. Okay. Same thing with your knee, right? You have muscles, the hamstrings, that start all the way up here, and it crosses the back of your hip joint and crosses the back of your knee joint. Okay, so if you've got a knee flexion contracture that's real tight, and you start cranking, and you're cranking on that entire muscle, there's a potential to cause some damage there. Okay. So before you start anything aggressive, okay, definitely getting to a physical therapist to have them evaluate, if you have a contracture and what is the degree of that contracture. Okay. Is there pliability there? And then how do you slowly go about regaining that range of motion? If it took 2 years for you to get to that point, it's going to take time to make any progress in that regard. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Okay. But it is going to take time. And again, guidance of a physical therapist. Okay. The other thing also, Jerry Ann, to consider is pelvic and core strength. I cannot stress that enough. Whether you are someone who's learning to use the prosthesis and you're already up and standing, or if you are a wheelchair user and you have to keep yourself strong while you're in the wheelchair, glute strength and core strength. Okay. And when I talk about core, especially for my women, I'm including pelvic floor, abdominals, back extensors, and the diaphragm. That is your complete core right there. Okay. And all of those parts need to be addressed. Okay. Yeah. All right. Robert says, that's very interesting, Robert. Robert says, I like that everyone says, I love the lights and it is positive. Without the lights, I was always told, sorry, how did it happen with negative? And I like positive. That's very interesting. And I've heard similar comments from people, for example, who have the therapy dogs, that when they have the therapy dogs, they feel that people approach them in a more positive way compared to before having a therapy dog. I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments on this, guys, and tell me what your experience is. Robert also says, I went from a 25-degree contracture to 2 degrees thanks to my physical therapist. Yeah. And again, we can do a lot of things here, but everybody, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say everyone's a little bit different and you need to have a PT look at you, but there is a reason for that, guys. There's a reason for that. And again, there are complications that come from using a wheelchair for a longer period of time. So if walking is going to be a goal that you would like to work towards, you want to do it the right way. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Ooh, here's a good one. This one came in through text messaging. And again, guys, I am trying to grow my text service. This allows me to communicate. This allows me also to communicate when I have a sponsored show where you guys can get the drop on some of the giveaways early. It also allows you to text me your questions. So guys, if you have not already done so, I would humbly ask if you could please join my texting service. All you have to do is text Cosi Talks, one word, just like that, to that particular number that's on the screen, 855-721-0837. I don't send spam. I don't send a lot of useless text messages. I know that drives me nuts. I'll send you a link once a week when I go live with the links, so it's easier for you to find me. All right, so this question says, I am an above-the-knee amputee as of January of 2025. So relatively new, we would say February, March, April, May, so 4.5 months. The surgeon gave me a shrinker to wear, but my wound has not completely healed. I have read not to wear the shrinker until the wound is completely healed. What is your thinking, please? So it's very interesting, guys, that I just said, listen to your surgeon, listen to your surgeon, listen to your surgeon. So you're going to be chuckling when you hear my next comments on this one. So this person had their amputation 4.5 months ago, and the wound has not completely healed. Red flag number 1. Okay. Why hasn't that wound healed? Is this person seeing a wound care specialist? Okay. The answer should be yes, they should be seeing a wound care specialist. For a wound that has taken 4.5 months to heal, a wound care specialist needs to be looking at this wound. That may or may not be the actual surgeon. Okay. It depends on who the surgeon is. Okay. There are some surgeons that they will refer out to a wound care specialist team, and I am a huge fan of that. Okay. Why isn't that wound healing? Okay. Is there something going on with their medical status? Do they have uncontrolled diabetes? Are they having a crisis with their autoimmune disease? Are they on dialysis where they're constantly having edema and shrinking, right? And it's pulling on the wound site. Okay. What is going on there? With regards to the shrinker, I would say no. Because when you put a shrinker on, and those of you who have one, you know exactly what I'm talking about, you have to really pull it on. Okay. It's kind of like putting Spanx on, like a very thick Spanx. And of course, mine is all the way at the bottom of my goodie bag over there, so I can't grab it. So as you're pulling it on, you are shearing over that wound site. Okay, you are dragging that thing over the wound site. So if I have somebody who has a non-healing wound 4.5 months after surgery, I would not be inclined to put a shrinker. Okay, now I have to say, because I'm supposed to say this, you need to go and have that conversation with your surgeon. And the way I would express this to the surgeon is I would say, I am concerned that in pulling this shrinker on, I'm going to be pulling over that wound site. Okay. Hopefully that word pulling will trigger the surgeon and say, oh, wait, let's find a different solution. Now, the surgeon might say, well, you have a lot of swelling and that is preventing your wound from closing. And the surgeon would be correct in saying that. If you have a lot of swelling, a lot of edema, right, it's not going to allow the nutrients to get to that wound, and it will not allow that circulation to get to that wound. It will not allow that wound to close. But there are other ways of managing edema and swelling without having to use a shrinker. Okay. And I've seen some really nasty, nasty cases of people who use a shrinker before the sutures are removed, and it's a disaster. Okay. So again, I will never officially say, don't do what your surgeon tells you to do. Okay. But I will tell you, before you put that shrinker on, go back to your surgeon and ask them, is this the best course of action? Can we find a different way to manage edema that will not shear across my wound site? So what are a couple of things that you can do? Tubi grip. Okay. Tubi grip. I love Tubi grip. Okay. It looks like a little elastic sock and it's a tube. Okay. And it's different from a shrinker. It's not as aggressive as a shrinker. So it's not going to give as much compression as a shrinker, but you can put it on without shearing that wound site. In fact, that's what we use those first couple of days after surgery, right? It's inexpensive. It can be fit to any limb shape. It's easy to swap in and out in case it gets dirty from the wound. Okay. And it can be effective at managing edema. Second thing, ACE wrapping. Emily just said it right there. There you go. ACE wrapping. But the ACE wrapping has to be done very specific manner. Okay. And again, it's not very commonly used in the United States because typically we do something like Tubi grip and then eventually progress to the shrinker once that wound has closed. But in places like Guatemala and places like Europe, they use ACE wrapping and it can be effective. It's a bit more of a pain in the neck, right? And yes, it does require a certain skill level and training because you have to put it on a proper way. Otherwise, you're going to cause more problems, right? Yes, Marty, you're correct. It is a figure eight. It's a specialized figure eight though. Okay. So it's a very specialized way of doing the wrap, but I've taught, years ago, I used to teach patients how to do it, taught patients how to do it in Guatemala. It can still be done. Okay. So first thing to do is go back to your surgeon and say, are you sure you want me to pull this shrinker on over my wound? I am afraid that it is going to shear the wound. And if the surgeon says yes, because we're trying to get the swelling down, okay, can we please talk about Tubi grip or ACE wrapping? And there, guys, there's other methods as well out there. Those are the two I'm most familiar with because that's what we used in the hospital I worked in. But there are other methods like air splints. There's a lot of contraptions out there that help with edema with amputation that do not involve shearing and pulling a shrinker on. Okay. So again, open that line of communication with your surgical team. Age is a factor in healing. When you are so old as me, it takes time. Yes, guys, age, there's a lot of a lot of factors that will impact healing. Nutrition, protein intake, glucose. Is your glucose under control? Edema, we just talked about that, right? Edema can really affect your wound healing process. There's a lot of things involved there. Okay, so when I see a wound that's delayed in healing, I'm like, it's time to call in the cavalry and get the wound care team involved. Okay. And sometimes, guys, you can have surgeons who, especially general surgeons, who are very well versed in wound care because that's what they do a lot. But sometimes you just hit a wound that is just plateaued in its healing, plateaued in its healing. And it's time to get a fresh pair of eyes on it and call in a wound care specialist and see what they have to say. Okay. Christy says, I use that on the other leg because I have edema. Yeah. And again, guys, tubic grip is not as aggressive as shrinker, right? It's not going to give you the same amount of compression, but it'll still help. It'll start working. Earl says they did both with me. Let's see. Emily says, yes, tubic grip. Marianne says, some people, especially me, 4 months isn't a long time to heal. In the end, I wasn't even given shrinkers. Right. Let's see. Marty says, just got my shrinker today. All right. Okay. So that, that's kind of again, go ask your surgeon again. And here's my last, if you have a non-healing wound and your surgeon is not addressing it, you need to go find, you can go find a wound care specialist team. There's a lot of wound care centers in major cities, so you can go and see one. Okay, ask for the referral and go see one. And guys, I'm sorry to say that has happened a couple of times here in Tampa, where I've had a couple of patients walk in to see me, big gaping wound. Their surgeon didn't see anything wrong with it and just said it's going to heal. The prosthetist also didn't. I mean, it was 2 extreme cases, but it did happen. And, they were just told, keep putting dressings on it and whatever. And I sent them to the wound care center. Okay. So again, this is just something that you can advocate for yourself and have that done. So I know I just kind of threw everything at you there, right? That one, guys. All right, guys. This is all the questions we have. We have some really great questions. A lot of talk, like I said, on osseointegration. And guys, I'm happy to answer your questions. By no means do I know everything about osseointegration, but fortunately, I have the wonderful support of Integrum and several of the ambassadors. Glenn, thank you again for your support this evening. So if I don't know the answer, I will go and find the answer for you. And this also goes for anything in amputation. So guys, thank you again for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. I will see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.